Brothers and sisters, the scripture says that the people that walked in darkness, the people that sat in darkness, have seen a great light. I say that the black man and woman of America have not just seen, but have a great light in their midst. Then the question comes, not how well you respond to the truth of the message of the messenger of God. The trial and the test on the people are come on two sides of the equation with the message. It is how well we respond to the message, and then how well we respond to the mortality of the man that's giving the message. And oftentimes, or most times, as we read in the scriptures, the failure of the people came in their disrespect to the messenger of God. Now, are you listening to me? I don't know about you, but I see Brother Farrakhan as the messenger of God. There is no doubt in my mind that he is who he is, because one came before him. If it was not for the man that preceded Farrakhan, there would be no Farrakhan. You would not be here today. Your consciousness would not have been awakened to a new reality if it was not for the coming of Master Farad Muhammad and raising up from the mud of civilization a man that you and I are coming acquainted with as Elijah Muhammad. So, the great light is the knowledge of God, the knowledge of self, and the knowledge of the devil. This is a blessing indeed to a people who have lost the knowledge of self, their God, and their religion. Blessed are we, the lost found nation in the West, to have received the long-awaited Mahdi of the Muslims and the Messiah of the Christians. Blessed are we, the deprived, the rejected, the despised, that God has bestowed his favor upon us by raising up a messenger from among us that will teach and guide us back into righteousness and to our former place of glory. He raised up Elijah to turn your hearts back to the hearts of your fathers and the fathers' hearts back to the children. Elijah comes to prepare the way for who? For God. And how does that man prepare the way for you to meet with God? It is because Elijah was prepared by God. And the way that you and I become acquainted with God is that somebody had to talk and walk and sleep with God, that he could bring that reality right to home to you and I, the reality that God is a man. Are you listening this evening? You wake up, take that crust out of your eyes. Listen to me. As we prepare to receive a divine man that many call him a madman, a magician, a false prophet. Yet his works, here he is. He's with us right now, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. Let us receive him with a warm round of applause. All praises due to Allah, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. All praises due to Allah. Allahu Akbar. Praise be to Allah. Thank you.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, to whom praise is due forever, we thank Allah over and over again for His mercy in raising up in our midst the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Messenger of Allah, the Messiah, the Exalted Christ. I greet all of you, my dear brothers and sisters, with the greeting words of peace in the Arabic language. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, sir.
Where are the FOI officials? Yes. Thank you. Brother Captain, did you inform the FOI that I wanted to see them tonight?
Yes, sir.
You did? I don't have to ask the sisters that they inform me. I see them. Were you successful in informing them? Success means that you touch bases with them and they responded. I want to see those who you called and those who came. I want the list. Thank you. Everybody that is standing on the wall, why don't you just get a seat? I appreciate your attendance and your response to the call to be with us tonight. After looking at the bodies of our deceased brothers yesterday, I thought that I should like to say something to all of you tonight that I would hope you would take as seriously as life itself. The word Mahdi, is an Arabic word which means the guide, the guided one, or one, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches, who is self-guided. Mahdi, guide. Why is there a prophecy of the coming of Mahdi, or the coming of a guide. What does that prophecy imply? We do not need a guide if we know the way. But if we know not the way to get successfully from point A to point B, we need either a guide to guide us or guidance to follow that will lead us to the place that we intend to go. In this case, the Mahdi is a very powerful human being. According to the sayings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the Mahdi comes out of the family of the Prophet Muhammad. The Mahdi is a human being with awesome power to guide a people to success through the destruction and judgment of the wicked. Mahdi. That's an Arabic word. We are not expected as students of English to understand the word as such, but the concept we do understand. If you have ever traveled on a highway and you have gotten lost, then you are in need of what? Guidance. So you stop at a gas station. Why do you stop there? Because you trust that the person in the gas station knows more about that area than you do. So you ask the person at the gas station, could you tell me please where I can get such and so highway to get to such and so place? Or if there's a state trooper or policeman nearby, an authority figure, you stop the state trooper or you stop your car and ask the person whom you trust to give you directions, to direct you toward your goal. Imagine climbing a very high and difficult mountain. Nobody climbs mountains who has never climbed it before without what? A guide. You can't say, if you accept this person as a guide, that you don't trust them. Because if you don't trust the guide, you should never have attempted to follow the guide up the mountain. So there has to be an area of trust, confidence between the guide and the one guided. Anytime the trust is broken between the guide and the guided one, then the one who loses trust, loses faith, loses confidence in the guide, loses confidence in the guidance, and gets lost again.
Yes, sir.
Do you follow me?
Yes, sir.
When you don't know the road, not only is trust necessary in the guide, but there is a level of obedience that is expected from the guided one. If you are to be successful in being guided, you have to be submissive to the guide. Submissive to the guide means you yield to the guide so that you become one with the guide. You are in obedience to the guide, so when the guide puts his foot down, you put your foot down in the same place. The difficulty in getting through the dangerous time that we have to get through is how well you respect the guide, what kind of trust you have in the guide, and to what degree will you yield in submission to the guidance that you may be of the guided ones. In the Quran, Allah says, He it is who sent His messenger with the guidance and the true religion, that He, Allah, may make it overcome the religions, all of them, though the polytheists may be adverse. He not only sends His messenger with the true religion, but He sends him with the guidance. Now, since the Quran says the guidance and the true religion, then the true religion is one thing, the guidance in applying it is another thing. So one without the other is not good. You can't say, I have guidance and not the true religion. Nor can you say, I have the true religion and no guidance. Both of them have to go hand in hand. One without the other leads to disaster. Now, why did I call you out tonight to take up this particular subject with you? It is because we are entering into the most critical time in the history of America, in the history of black people, and in the history of the Nation of Islam. And if we reject the guide and guidance, we could lose our lives. And depending upon the degree of our submission to the guide and the guidance is the degree of safety that we will have as we go through this difficult period. Now, that should seem quite simple. I know that as a black person, we're lost here in America. To get through the maze of confusion put up by white folk and their crooked, devious institutions and their crooked and devious manner in dealing with black people, I need a guide.
Yes, sir.
I don't know about you, but I know what I need. And heck, if I know you like I know myself, you're not smart enough. None of you, no, none of us are smart enough to deal with this white man. I'm going to say that again.
Yes, sir.
None of us are smart enough, wise enough to deal with that white man.
That's right.
He is so wise and artful in his wickedness, that it is written of him in the book of Revelations that the dragon will curl his tail and bring down 1/3 of the stars of heaven. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad asked me one day, "Brother, do you know what that means?" I said, "No, sir." He said, "Brother, it means he will deceive even the holy wise scientists of Islam." Now, when a man is that heavy that he can deceive some of the wisest in the study of Islam, and you just came to the knowledge yesterday, then you and I don't know enough to escape Satan's net if the wisest in Islam have to be totally on God, lest they are deceived. Then we do need what? We need a guide and the guidance. Okay. Since we know what we need, and it's clear from our own failure in life that we need guidance, then the question that has to be answered by us is, if we are able to recognize the guide and recognize the guidance, will we be submissive enough to yield to the guidance and the guide? How many of you think that if you recognize the guide and knew his guidance to be correct, that you could follow that guidance to success? How many of you think you could do that? And you know something, brother? And sister, it's good you think that way, because you should think that you could, because you can if you would. But let me show you what's against you, because if it were that easy, all of us would make it. But the scripture says many are called, just a few are chosen. The scripture says many started the journey, but only a few ended. It says broad is the road that leads to destruction, and there are many on that road. Narrow is the way that leads to salvation. There's only a few on that road. A narrow path, a straight path. But the narrow path deals with the problem of obedience and disobedience. I'd like to say that again. The narrow path, the straight path, deals with how well we can obey God. The broad path on which many travel is the path of rebellion against God, and most are on that path. What path are we on tonight? Now, why are we called in the Bible stiff-necked, hard-hearted, and what? Rebellious. What is that again? Man, that's a hell of a name to give a people. They are stiff-necked, hard-hearted, and rebellious. if that's the characteristic that distinguishes the people of God, stiff-necked, hard-hearted, rebellious, and a guide comes. Mahdi comes. Messiah comes to guide the people that are lost, and they're stiff-necked, hard-hearted, and rebellious. The question is, will the stiff-necked, hard-hearted, and rebellious people lose those characteristics to become obedient to the guide that they might save their own lives? Or will they still be stiff-necked, hard-hearted, and rebellious? Brothers and sisters, we have several strikes against us. That's why they didn't see too many people making it. If you look in the book of Revelations, it doesn't tell you that a lot of people made it. The messenger of Allah, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, wrote, "For the sad prophecy of the loss of my people, I write these words, because the scripture saw 144,000 making it." That's a very small number of people. What happened to the rest of them? They were stiff-necked, hard-hearted, and rebellious, and they chose death by their disobedience rather than life by their obedience. Now, what are some of these strikes that are against us? First of all, rebellion is now a part of the nature of us. Wait, what did you mean? The Quran says we are Muslims by nature. Yes, that's true. But something has been added to the nature. Rebellion. How did you get to be rebellious? Our father was a rebel. What? What do you mean, Brother Farrakhan? I think we ought to be able to face some truth tonight. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that there are 24 major scientists, or scientists rather, that do the work of guiding and developing civilization. 12 major and 12 minor. These 24 are written of in the book of Revelations as the 24 elders. The 12 major scientists, one from among the 12, the messenger teaches, is the supreme being. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said one of the 12 told the others he wanted to make a people close to nature that could conquer the jungle life, withstand it, overcome it. But this had to be put before the other 11 for approval. And the other 11 disapproved. And he, being one of that high circle of gods, rejected their disapproval of his idea. What did he do? He rebelled. What's that got to do with me? That's our father. He's a rebel. Not only a rebel, but a rebel against God and the holy wise scientists. Are you listening?
Yes, sir.
So the scientists told Shabazz, you can't make your man here. You have to take your family and go. in lesson number 1, why isn't the devil settled on the best part of the planet Earth? Because the earth belongs to the original black man, and knowing that the devil was wicked, he put him out in the west part of the earth and kept the best part preserved for himself. So whenever you rebel, the punishment is, first of all, exile. Put them out. So since we had room on the earth for the rebel, we put Shabazz out. Out from where? That critical area where the black man chose as the best part of the planet for him to settle and start new civilization. The rich Nile Delta, all in that area called the Garden of Eden. That's where the original man first started. When this planet was found in its new orbit after the explosion of moon from Earth 66 trillion years ago, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us. So Shabazz was not permitted to stay in that area, so he took his family into the jungle of East Asia, which we now call Africa, to make a people close to nature. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, this is the origin of kinky hair, because we didn't have kinky hair prior to that. The hair on our head was like the hair on our eyebrows. The hair on your eyebrows straight, the hair on your head is not the same as the hair on your eyebrow. But the hair of every other people is the same as their eyebrow. Your eyebrow straight, your hair something different. Wouldn't you like the hair on your head to be as straight as the hair on your eyebrow? That's why you're so busy frying it. That's why you're so busy pulling it. Because your nature tells you that the kink I mean, you know, with I'm black and I'm proud, we got to learn to be proud of kinks. Because most of your family of other black people on the earth, jet black. They didn't have no broad nose and thick lips and kinky hair. They were dark-skinned people, jet black. But they had straight hair, a thinner lip, a thinner nose. But we are marked as a different kind of black person. And we were rejected and despised, not only from the circle of the gods, but we were despised and rejected by all the other dark people of the earth. This is why today black people with kinky hair and broad nose and thick lips are rejected in every society. I want you to hear me well tonight.
Yes, sir.
Why are we rejected? Because the essence of beauty is in obedience and submission to God. And the essence of ugliness is when you rebel against God. And when you rebel against God, in your rebellion, you are marked with a certain mark of your rebellion, which is the disfigurement of your internal self, which manifests in the disfigurement of your external self. And this is why when you look at our people, wherever we are found on the earth, you find us either disfiguring ourselves physically because we are disfigured on the inside because of rebellion. We visit our brothers and sisters in Africa and in the isles of the Pacific and in the jungles of the Amazon, and wherever you find our people in savagery, you find them disfiguring themselves. And in their disfiguring themselves, it is a sign of something within that is disfigured. And the disfiguring within, the ugliness within, is caused by rebellion against God. And because the darker people of the earth who had not rebelled looked at us with disdain, dislike, even hatred, we are styled in the Bible as the despised and the rejected. We are called in the Bible the prodigal son, who left the brothers who were at home in obedience to the father. This prodigal son went out. We've been gone 50,000 years. That's a long time to be in rebellion. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
We are the oldest rebel on the earth. How old is Christianity according to student enrollment? What is the birth record of said nation of Islam? And what is the birth record of Christianity and Buddhism? If Buddhism is 35,000 years old, and Christianity, according to the writing, is 551 years, and that 551 is taken from the time that the Christians were let out of Europe by Columbus. Then if our father rebelled 50,000 years ago, then we are the oldest rebel on the earth. We couldn't talk like this years ago because we had had so much mud thrown on us we couldn't accept it. But you can face the whole truth today.
Yes, sir.
You all right?
Yes, sir.
As you probably have heard me say in other tapes, you had nothing to do with the making of the devil. Yaqub was no kinky-headed, broad-nosed, thick-lipped man. He was born 20 miles outside of the holy city of Mecca in Arabia. You haven't been there in a long time, brother. Our people down in the jungle. So where did Yaqub get his 59,999 rebels from? He got them from out of the original people who were still left in Arabia. And from that you get the making of another rebel, the Caucasian devil. Over here in the Western Hemisphere, you have the Native American called the Red Indian, whom the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said was exiled. Look at the word, exile, into this part of the earth over 16,000 years ago for his rebellion and breaking the law of Islam. So the Western Hemisphere was a prison house for all the rebels. Y'all all right?
Yes, sir.
We're just talking now on the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and how many strikes are against us to make it. And if you're going to make it today, you got to deny your father, Shabbat.
Yes, sir.
And you have to accept your new father.
Yes, sir.
You have to come out of the death of the rebellion of Shabazz into the life of submission of Master Farad Muhammad.
Oh, yeah.
I want you to hear me because I don't know when I'll be back again. And a very difficult time is coming up where you need guidance to get through. And if you trust the guide and trust the guidance and then go inside yourself to fight against your rebellion.
Yes, sir.
You have rebelled from day one. You are not an easy
people to lead, teach, or guide, because each one of you has your own way that you want to put over God's way. You will even try to corrupt God's house to make God's house a reflection of you and your rebellion rather than obedience to the will and the law of God. Yes. Oh, I know it hurts. Yeah, but I really don't give a damn tonight. I really don't care who it hurts. Because if it hurts you, it's because you are exactly the person I'm describing tonight. That's why you're in the hell that you're in. Because you're easily led in the wrong direction, but hard as hell to lead in the right direction. Look at your condition. Male and female are destroyed people because you're rebellious. Even when you say you submit, you lie. You're always trying to find a way out of submission to do your own thing and put God's name on it. The children of Shabazz, that's who we're dealing with. A 50,000-year-old rebel that says he's lost and wants to go home. And the guide has come, but the fool refuses to follow the guidance. Now death has entered the door. Death has entered the house. Because judgment is not going to start somewhere else. Judgment starts in the house of God. So I'm forced by the Spirit that has come over me in these last few days just to come here tonight to talk to you as seriously as I can about yourself and myself and ourselves, that perhaps we get ourselves together before death claims the whole house. I wrote the Honorable Elijah Muhammad once, and I was so angry with the scientists because they sent prophets to white people to help white people up out of their condition. And we've been in this condition for 50,000 years, and we didn't get nobody. So I wrote the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and was literally cussing out the scientists. I don't like them people. And I knew if I was going off, the best person to write was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Yes, sir. So if I'm going off, he can help me, you know, get my head back on track. Yes, sir. And you should never be afraid to be wrong in the presence of the guide who loves you. Yes, sir. Never be afraid to say to the guide, the apostle, you know, I think about it this way. So that if we're off, the guide can correct us, because after all, don't we want to go right? If you want to go right, you want to be corrected. And you can't be corrected if you hold your ignorance to yourself. It'll pop out some other way. So hell, I was going to write him and tell him how crazy I was getting so he could help me out. So when I came to Chicago, I walked in very gingerly and quietly and frightened, because I knew I had cussed out the scientists. And I asked him, dear apostle, did you get my letter? He said, yes, sir, brother, I got it. He said, brother, don't you ever send a letter like that through my secretaries. They don't know how to handle that kind of wisdom. He said, but I'll answer it later. First thing he told me, don't send a letter like that through your secretary, because secretaries read your mail. And they may read something to blow their own mind, you know what I mean? Especially if you're a nosy secretary. Any person that this is touching of the living or the dead is not coincidental. You have to be careful with the mail of the messenger, because people send him all kind of things. You might open something and it explode on you. You don't ever want to get into something that don't concern you. And that's a general principle for everybody. Nosiness is the mark of a hypocrite. I'm going to say that again. Hypocrites are people that always want to get into somebody else's business. They don't mind their own business. They want to mind everybody else's business. Right. If you get a letter, they'll be looking over your shoulder, reading what somebody wrote you. Come in your house, see a book, they'll pick it up, read it. They didn't ask your permission. Come in your house, and you look, they're in your bedroom. Now, what the hell are you doing up here? I didn't sit down. Go down there go there, sit down. Look, if you're going to move around in somebody's house, you ask permission. Right. You don't just get up and wander over somebody's house, go in their kitchen, open their refrigerator. What the hell did you put in there? You're just crazy and savage. And you got people like that. You invite them in your house, and before you know it, they're in your refrigerator. So I didn't notice you paying the food bill. We need a lot of training in manners. We need a lot of training in civilized conduct. We really do. Because we'll never fit in any civilized society and be respected when we're ill-mannered. Now, the reason I said, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told me don't send that through his secretaries, because some of the secretaries are charged with the responsibility of reading the mail of the messenger's ministers. And there's sometimes ministers will write things so heavy that it may hurt the mind of the person who reads the letter. So he told me put that kind of letter directly in his hand. Then when we got to the table that night, he said these words. He said, brother, God didn't send us out there. We went out. We rebelled. He's under no obligation to come and get you. It's like a rebellious child telling the mother and father, I don't need you. I'm leaving. And the mother and the father say, okay, go ahead. Then when you get your buns out there and can't make it, you get angry with mama and dad because they didn't come get you. They didn't send you out there with your rebel self. You went out there. Now when you get out there and get in hell, don't expect somebody to come and get you. They may if they're merciful, but they don't have to. They'll wait on you till you get beat all the way down. And then you drag your half-dead self back home talking about, I'm sorry. Then they can accept you or reject you. That's entirely up to them when they didn't send you away. So it is with God. When you rebel against God, whether it's 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 20,000, 50,000, he does what he pleases. Right. When you rebel against him, he can wait for 100,000 years before he sends somebody after you. If he ever sends somebody. So the messenger cleared me up on that. So I learned me a lesson. Now I'm saying all of that to say this, that a wise God knew that Shabazz, our father, when he rebelled, he did make a people close to nature. He made a strong people. He was in rebellion, but even in our rebellion, we produce something that God can use. That's why the Quran says, whatsoever is in the heavens and whatsoever is in the earth glorifies Allah. So here, Shabazz made a people that conquered the jungle life. And then when Prophet Muhammad got the revelation of this book, Quran, and we, the children of Shabazz, heard it, just the recitation of the Quran from the 7th to 11th century, black people rose up under the banner of Islam. For the first time in nearly 50,000 years, we got a whiff of our nature through the Prophet Muhammad, and those black Muslims were the ones that conquered. Do you hear me?
Yes, sir.
We came up out of Africa, conquered Spain, Portugal, the Iberian Peninsula, conquered southern France, conquered Greece, and all up into near the gates of Vienna. Muslims went, and they were called blackamoors, or Moors and Muslims and Saracen. These are your black fathers, children of Shabazz now, coming up again to come back to their original position. But it will be Islam to bring them back and no other power, because Islam is their original nature. So from the 7th to the 11th century, blacks rose up under the banner of Islam, under Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and we conquered the known world. We were the greatest soldiers, the greatest warriors, because we're the toughest people on earth today. Because rebellion made us into a strong people, though hated, though despised, though rejected. We are strong and powerful. We're like nature. Don't care what you do to nature. Nature will always right itself, correct itself. Indestructible. That's the black man, the tribe of Shabazz. He was a rebel, but he had it. He rebelled, but he was giant. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Now, brothers, sisters, these black people that conquered almost the known world under Islam, white folks so feared us in our Islamic development that when white folks started getting our fathers out of Africa, bringing them to the Americas, which Christopher Columbus, they're celebrating the quincentennial of Columbus, when he discovered this part of the world, he found the Native American over here, the indigenous people, who had been exiled 16,000 years ago. So Columbus, after seeing them, and they wouldn't submit to him, he had to kill them. So white folks started killing the Native Americans, but the West Indies, where Columbus landed, San Salvador, and all of those islands, they became dumping grounds for the slaves. So now one rebel the latest rebel, the Caucasian, goes into Africa to get the oldest rebel. And he brings the old rebel, the new rebel brings the old rebel out and brings them to the West Indies to break them in as slaves. The more submissive ones of the rebellious house were sent to America. The most rebellious were kept in the Caribbean. Isn't that something?
Yes, sir.
Really? And if you notice in the Caribbean, the blacks under Toussaint Louverture and Dessalines and Christophe in Haiti beat the greatest army in the world at that time, which was the army of Napoleon. Those black brothers whooped Napoleon's group. That's why they crush Haiti today. They don't ever want Haiti to rise because your brothers down there, they got a rebellious streak in them. And white folk couldn't deal with them. They rebelled against the young rebel, and an old rebel is much more terrible than a young rebel. The old rebel just kicked the young rebel. They rebelled against the young rebel, and an old rebel is much more terrible than a young rebel. The old rebel just kicked the young rebel. And they said, well, we got the only way we can keep these people is we got to destroy their minds. So when they got us on this shore, as well as in the Caribbean, but over here mainly, they broke us entirely. Took our name, language, culture, religion, God, and you know the rest of it, and turned this black man inside out. Now you've got the Native American, a rebel, the white man, a rebel, the black man, a rebel, inhabiting the rebel hemisphere. There's a hemisphere of rebels, each one giving the other rebel hell. Then the rebels start mixing their blood. Rebel times rebel equals rebel square. So now, what you got is a rebellious house. Look, this is why the Revelator said Babylon is fallen because she has become a habitation of devils. That's the mark of a devil, a rebel against God. So the whole Western Hemisphere is a house of rebellion, and all are classified under the name devil. Well, who did you think you were, the saints? Your nature is saintly. Our nature is God. But there's something added. You see, when you do what Shabazz did and what Yaqub did, he interfered with the nature of a thing. So the nature of the black man has been interfered with. I'm talking about the kinky-headed brother, which is us. The nature of Islam has been interfered with, and the nature of rebellion has been introduced to the nature of submission. It's why you're constantly at war with yourself.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Why did the Honorable Elijah Muhammad say, I think it was in 1973, the operation of a nation? He's saying to God, operate on us and take out of us that germ from which the grafted devil was made. But also take out of us that which Shabazz introduced. Rebellion, negativity, and operation. So with all those strikes against you and me, here comes the guide. Now, he got a hard job. Yes, sir. That's why when the Savior left and gave the mission to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he said he had the hardest job of any man who ever lived, because our rebellion is classified in spiritual language as death itself. And if you look in both the Bible and the Quran, when Adam rebelled, death fell on Adam, death fell on Adam's family, death fell on the whole planet because of one man's rebellion. So now, here we are, shaped in iniquity, born in sin, as the scripture says, and shaped in iniquity. Do you know what that means? Sin is transgression of the law. We were born in a civilization in transgression to God's law. Now we have been shaped by the society in rebellion against God. So our way of life is rebellion. I mean, if you just look from the first moment you get up in the morning to the time you lay down at night, you're in constant rebellion against God. Let me see if I can prove it. We get up in the morning. Everybody all right?
Yes, sir.
We may not pray. We may not even thank the God for getting us through the night back into the day. Then we sit down and eat hog maw or pork bacon, which is against the law of God. Eating swine flesh, starting you off rebelling. You're not praying, you're eating the wrong food. How you living? Who you living with? You shacking or you married? Talk to me. I don't know. I'm just asking a question. You shacking or you married? Mom in one room with a strange man. The children growing up, each is a child of a different father. Why? Rebellion, man.
Yes, sir.
God's law is strict and straight. Ain't nobody living that. One brother in the house, sissy, their sister's a lesbian, one is a drunkard. Where the heck is that in harmony with God? You get out the house and go to school, learning from the other rebel, the chief rebel. Christopher Columbus discovered America. And you start lying after that liar. You go to church and you learn about the white Jesus. And Jesus was a black man. They tell you you're going to heaven after you're dead, and they work the hell out of you while you live so you can produce a heaven for them right on the earth. But you're going to get yours after you're dead. Everything in rebellion. While you're in the locker room, hey, what's happening? You got any stuff? You getting any stuff this morning? You getting a little reefer? You getting a little crack? And you may be in the locker room tightening up. Got your piece or your little shank. In total rebellion against God and against yourself. So we live a rebellious life. We just live in rebellion. Now we're in a hell of a condition. And God says, I will search the earth for my sheep that is lost. And I will bring him again. God is saying, I don't care how lost they are, I'm going to find them. And I'm going to bring them back. How are you going to bring them back? I'm going to lead the blind by a way that they knew not. How can you lead a rebel if he won't follow? He said, I'm going to make them to submit. And that mighty Mahdi came to North America by himself in the person of Master Farad Muhammad. I thank Allah over and over and over and over again for his coming in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, bringing with him the guidance and the true religion to get us up out of this condition. Wait. To get us up out of this condition, brothers and sisters, and remove the mark of the young rebel, Caucasian devil, and remove the mark of the old rebel, our father Shabazz. Now we got to overcome the rebellion of the rebellious devil and overcome the rebellion of our father, and we are asked to become Muslim. What is a Muslim? A Muslim is one who submits his or her will to do the will of God. That means you got to work against yourself. It's not going to be easy to be a Muslim, but it's your power, it's your way out of this thing. You got to be a Muslim. You got to be right. You got to submit to God or die. There's no other way. Wait. He called us Muslim. He gave us a name contrary to the way we've been trained. How many Muslims are there in North America? A little over 17 million. Did I hear you say that some of the 17 million do not know that they're Muslims? Yes, sir. I can hardly believe that, unless they're blind, deaf, and dumb. Well, they were made blind, deaf, and dumb by the slave master when they were babies. So here now, Master Farad is offering a defense for us, but he's calling us Muslims. He's giving us a noble name to live up to. Then he gives us a flag. Where is it? In the back. The sun, moon, and star. He gives you a flag that represents submission. The sun is in obedience to the law under which it is created. The moon is in obedience. The stars are in obedience. So he gives you a flag that says submission. And he asks you to submit. Then he gives you a prayer to say, surely I have turned myself to thee, O Allah, being upright to him who originated the heavens and the earth, and I am not of the polytheists. Huh? The God is giving you now access to him, that he can strengthen us against the rebellious nature and bring us more and more and more and more into submission. The more we learn to obey, the more we fight against our rebellion to be more and more obedient to God, the stronger we become, the more powerful we become, the more he exalts us. But if we come to Islam and then start acting like our father Shabazz, then the beauty that comes to you on submission. Look at how many of us were so ugly when we came to Islam. Let's deal with truth. Because we may not be the prettiest people in the world, but when you submit, something happens. That's right. I mean, your eyes brighten, your skin brightens. Muslims look so different from any other black people. Right. Why? Because when you submit to God, the mark of God's own beauty is stamped on you. And the more you obey, the more you submit, the more you follow the dietary law, the more you follow the restrictive law, the more you follow the rules and regulations and the protocols of the nation, the more beautiful you become, the stronger you become, and the more God begins to raise you and exalt you and make you a magnet to draw people unto you.
Beautiful.
We are called the Nation of Islam. A nation meaning a group or mass of people who are bound together by their obedience to the will of God. Now, brothers and sisters, I think I can bring this talk to a conclusion. I never met Master Farad Muhammad. I never saw his face. But I was blessed to hear the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And when I heard that man and saw that man, I knew that he had to have met with God to stand as tall as he stood, as strong as he stood, and to speak as boldly as he did. I knew he must have met with God. His submission forced mine. I couldn't get around his submission. So I bowed to him, and through him to Allah. And the moment I submitted, my whole life changed. I was a nice person before Islam. I drank a little, not a lot. I smoked a little, not a lot. I smoked a few reefers, not a lot. I popped a few pills, not a lot. You know what I mean? I was no addict, but I tried everything, you know, that everybody was doing. So I don't want nobody to think I fell down from the sky, you know what I mean? I came up out of hell just like everybody else. And even though I was a pretty good kind of person, I had moral character to a degree, I wasn't as right as I could be or as right as I should be. So when I yielded to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I threw the cigarettes away right away. Threw the reefer away, stopped drinking the wine, stopped eating hog. I never was a woman chaser, so that was not difficult. But then I had to go beyond just cleaning up those things. I had to commit my mind to study so that I could grow in knowledge to help the Honorable Elijah Muhammad with his people. And so he asked me to give up my music. My subject tonight, by the way, not that I'm going to start it now, I was on it all the time. My subject today is not from the Bible, obedience is better than sacrifice. Because what Allah has allowed me to see is that obedience is the highest form of sacrifice. For obedience causes you to give up your will. And that's the greatest thing you got, is your own will and your own desire. But when you will give that up for God, he can make you into something new. Now that's the decision that each one of us have to make somewhere along the line. Did Elijah Muhammad meet with God? We have to answer that question for ourselves. I believe he did. I believe that God came in the person of a human being Master Farad Muhammad. I believe that. I believe that Elijah Muhammad is the messenger of that God and the guide for us out of our condition. So because I believe that, now belief counts for nothing except what? Carried into practice. So now I got to prove that I believe by submitting to the guidance and the guide. The guide told me, get out of music. I gave him no argument. I got out. And everything that Elijah Muhammad asked me to do in the 20 years that I was under his tutelage, I don't know one thing that he asked me to do that I wasn't found trying to do, as God is my witness. And I don't believe I'm sitting in his seat because I'm better than somebody else. But I do believe God allowed me to sit in his seat because I was obedient.
Yes, sir.
I'm not smarter, but I was more obedient, more submissive. And because I was more submissive, he could make me into himself. Wait now. Now, the Bible and the Quran ask us for reasonable and reasoned obedience. Because the simple things that Elijah Muhammad asks us to do with simple reasoning, we could say, oh, that's right, it's intelligent, it's logical, certainly. I'll bow to that. But what he asks those whom he's going to make into the guides for others, what he asks them to do, believe me, it ain't reasoned. Sometimes reason can't figure it out. Only faith can figure it out. You tell me what kind of reasoning would make Abraham obey God's order to kill his own son. See, that's not logic. That's not reasoned obedience. That is faith in God's word. Because you can't find logic or reasoning to justify killing your child. But if God asked for it, Abraham was willing to do it. And just because he was willing to do it, God said, you don't have to do it. I just wanted to see, do you love, listen to me now, do you love me more than you love your son that I gave you after your wife was barren? Anytime God is going to call you for great work, he calls you to great sacrifice. And I'm telling you that the life of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was a life of complete sacrifice. I watched my mother from the time I was a little boy work day into the night to earn little monies to feed my brother and me and to give us a chance to be something better in life. She used to tell me how she would go with runs in her stockings to make sure we had a pair of socks that didn't have holes in it. She deprived herself that we might have something better. So her life for me and my brother was a life of sacrifice. But as I watched my mother sacrifice through her love for her children, she was putting into me or guiding and nurturing a love that God had already put in me for my people that would make my life in its entirety a sacrifice. So anybody connected with me is forced by the connection to sacrifice. Sacrifice is more painful because you got to give up something that is dear, that you love, but it's worth it in the end when you give it up, when you see the result of what you bring. Sacrifice is the thing that brings you closer to God. And the greatest of all sacrifice is to sacrifice your will, your desires on the altar of God for his purpose. I didn't want this. I didn't think in my heart that I would be a leader of black people. I didn't want nothing like this. I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to sing and play my instrument and dance and make money and make people happy. I had no thought of this. I had a life that I wanted to live that would have made my soul happy. But when I met Elijah Muhammad, I met the man that I was looking for and longing for and yearning for all my life, a man that would free black people with right guidance. So when he asked me to give up what I wanted for myself to accept what he wanted for us, like Peter fishing, and Jesus said, put up your net, I got another job for you. Everybody that met Jesus had to deny themselves in order to follow that man. You can't walk behind the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and call yourself a Muslim and not be willing to give up what you were to become what God wants you to be. And your problem is you keep wanting to hold on to the old nigger you. You don't want to give up the world. You don't want to give up your nigger way in order to become God. That's your problem. So you're half-stepping when you should be running. And you wonder why you're not successful. You wonder why you're not as fortunate as you want to be and could be. Just look at the nigger that's hanging around your neck and get rid of it and become the Muslim that you came here to be.
Yes, sir.
What are you here for? Are you here to be a Muslim, or are you here to be what you were? And if you're here to be a Muslim, then don't you think it's time that we stop rebelling?
Yes, sir.
And start submitting? Death has entered into the house. Death has not entered in because of obedience. Death has entered in because of rebellion. Are you saying, Brother Farrakhan, that everybody has died is in rebellion? No. There's a verse in the Quran that says Allah, can chastise, but, he won't just get those of you exclusively who are unjust. You take some of the righteous right along with the wicked. I'm appealing to you and me, brothers and sisters. You have the greatest, or we have the greatest opportunity in front of us if we surrender our lives to be what Allah wants. My wife, my children, they can tell you and testify. I didn't play with this. I studied the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's teaching 8, 9, 10 hours a day. Not for a year, not for 2 years, not for 3 years, but for over 10 years. This is why Brother Farrakhan can stand up and speak extemporaneously in a manner that people can't speak after writing out notes for years. Because I don't have to go reach for it. It's already inside. I put it in there from study. When you see him, look at him. When he speaks, listen to him. Whatever he tells you to do, do it. And wherever he tells you to stay away from, stay away from. Why? He will get you across the river on his shoulders. Why? He's a guide.
Yes, sir.
He's a guide. In him, God and the apostle has deposited guidance for a people that are lost. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the guide. Master Farad Muhammad is the Mahdi. But he, by the love of Elijah Muhammad for him, he made Elijah into himself. So that when you see one, you see both. Whether you want to believe it or not, because I was willing to obey him, he took that obedience and is making me into himself, that I might sit in his seat or stand in his place in his absence. I say that, beloved, not to put any kind of accolade or nothing on myself. But if you study the way you have been guided by Brother Farrakhan in these last 15 years, you came from nothing to where you are in the midst of your enemies with no bloodshed. And the only time that we got in trouble in this 15 years, if you examine it, you went contrary to what I asked you to do. Now I'm going to ask you to do something tonight. And if you are reasonable, you will obey. And even if it's beyond your ability to reason, your faith will cause you to obey. The Nation of Islam, even though some of us are rebellious, the Nation of Islam is being exalted by Allah, so that today our people recognize that the solution to their problems is in Islam, as taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Yes, sir.
The government of the United States realizes that there's power in the nation beyond our power, but it's the power of the Mahdi, God in person. His power is among this little group of people. In wide circles now, they're talking about what happened in Atlanta. They're talking about how you and we outdrew the World Series. That's something for them to talk about. The black leaders are saying among themselves, the people are listening to Farrakhan. Of course. The black clergy in Atlanta yesterday delivered a blow to the Jews. The Jews wanted to have a meeting with the black clergy. They waited till after we were gone. They didn't want to meet while we were there. So they called the black clergy. And you know, when Jews call the black clergy is always answered. But they called this time for a meeting. And the black clergy said, the only way we'll meet with you is if members of the Nation of Islam can be present. And you know what? The Jews said, we're not going to meet with the nation. And the clergy said, then you're not going to meet with us. Yes, sir. Now the black preachers getting strength. And I'm going to tell you, when the preacher stands up, it's over. Black folk are free overnight when the preacher stand up. Because traditionally, the preacher has been the weak link in the chain, but if that link is getting strong, we're about to go free, brothers. We're about to go free, sisters. And the roughest part, when you're about to go free, is there's got to be some shedding of blood. There's got to be some shedding of blood. I don't know whether you heard it on the news. 1 year ago, we established the Ministry of Health, and we placed Brother Minister Dr. Abdul Alim Muhammad at the head of the Ministry of Health, gave him a leave of absence from his ministry to fight against the scourge of AIDS. Whether you know it or not, since in that 1 year, that brother has been around the globe. And the patients that he in Washington, and Dr. Barbara Justice, who is a Muslim now, in New York, have between them around 900. And the ratio of our getting them out of AIDS is about a 90% from the research of a black Kenyan doctor, Dr. David Koresh. And you must remember, my brothers, that it was black Africa that gave medicine to the world. So isn't it natural that a cure for AIDS should come out from our black brother in Africa? Yes. And white folks didn't even want to recognize it. And guess what? The work of Minister Alim and Dr. Justice came to a head the other night. They met in Washington, D.C. under the auspices of the National Medical Association, which is the black doctors, who heard a report from Brother Alim and Dr. Justice, and it overwhelmed them. And they impressed upon the National Institute of Health, which is the governing body and policy maker of the United States government. And so under the Medical Association, our people met with the National Institute of Health a few days ago. And they were so overwhelmingly impressed with the weight of evidence that the government held a press conference and said that they are going to fund clinical trials for immuviron and low-dose alpha interferon on the road to Federal Drug Administration approval, which means ultimately the Nation of Islam will be able to set up our own laboratory and produce it in America for all of our people who are suffering from AIDS. Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! The nation is moving. But there's danger. There's danger. The movie Malcolm X will be coming out, Allah willing, on November the 18th. They moved it up from November the 20th to November the 18th. Now, all who wish to see the movie, of course, should go see it. Spike Lee is a wonderful brother who sees Malcolm X from the perspective of Malcolm X, which means he's a disbeliever in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, so his movie couldn't reflect our views.
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
That doesn't mean he's a bad fella. Many of you, your mothers don't believe in Elijah Muhammad. That don't mean your mama is not a good woman. She's just a disbeliever. But in time, maybe she'll believe, or dad will believe when they know better. Spike Lee the same. So the perspective of the movie is Spike Lee's perspective. He has listened to many witnesses, and he has formed his opinion. He's made his movie. I don't know how true it is, but from some of the parts of the script that I have read, it trashes the messenger. I don't know how true it is, because it could have been a false script. It could have been something put in my hands to create mischief. So the only way I'll know is to see the movie. And Spike, from what I understand, said that he would allow me a private showing of the movie. Well, I appreciate that. I really want to see it. But I'm not so worried about Spike Lee. And I'm not worried about the movie. But what gives me cause for concern is the motivation of the enemy. And I just want to spend the next 5 minutes giving you my view of this and what steps we should take.
First, many of you, prior to 2 or 3 years ago, knew of Malcolm X. Before all the X paraphernalia came out, how many of you knew of Malcolm? Would you raise your hands? Okay. Those of you who knew of Malcolm and had a love for him would like to see Malcolm's life preserved and his memory honored for the work that he did. Is that correct? Most of you that are not followers of Elijah Muhammad, but just love Malcolm, want to see his legacy preserved. Fine. But there's an insidious devil that knows, listen to this, there's nobody living right now that he knows of that he can cast against a living teacher, Louis Farrakhan. He wanted to use Jesse against me. That didn't work. And I guess some of the others that he wished to use, they're not strong enough with the people. So he has to try to break our ranks and get out opposition from within the house. I want you to listen carefully now. And then, even opposition that may rise from inside the house may not be effective. Not if those in the house really understand the guidance and the guide. So the enemy decided to raise Malcolm and make Malcolm the revolutionary saint of the black struggle, knowing that our young people would love Malcolm because these are strong young men. They don't want no weak nothing in front of them. They're strong, they're fearless, and he's put guns in their hands. So we're killing each other in the name of turf, gang war, and drugs. Now, white folks don't mind you having a gang. That ain't the problem. What white folk want is for blacks to organize to terrorize their own community. They want you to organize and drive by and shoot your own community. If you drove by and shot up their community, they come in with the army to put a stop to that overnight. Right. But since you driving by killing one another, they don't give a damn about that. Because the more niggas, if you pardon that expression, I'm speaking from their perspective. The more niggas you kill, the better they feel it is for them, because we're getting rid of their source of trouble. So they'll encourage that. That's why in Chicago right now, if the gangs say they want a truce, instead of the police saying, oh, really? We hope that it will work, though we doubt it. They come right out. We doubt it. It's not going to work. It's not sincere. Right. They throw cold water on it. Instead of saying it's a good thing, we encourage it, we hope it'll work, but let's be vigilant and see if it will. That's the approach the police should take. But actually, some of the police really want to keep this thing going.
Yes, sir. Right.
Now, how many of you are familiar with the Shiite Sunni Muslim split? Okay, it's very few. The Orthodox factions of Islam has split into two main groups, the Sunni and the Shiite.
And the Shiites believed that Ali was the successor to the Prophet. And because they believed that, and Ali was somehow pushed out of it until the fourth caliphate, when he became the actual head of the Nation of Islam. But then he was killed, and his sons were killed. So the blood of Ali and Hussein and Hassan has come down to us today in the killing of Shiite and Sunni. Now, why do I say that? Because among our young people there's a degree of loyalty today and fearlessness that if you and I belong to the Vice Lords or one of the other male organizations, and somebody from another group kills a member in our group, what do we do? What? We retaliate, right? And what do? We kill a member of the group that killed us. Isn't that the way it works? And it keeps on escalating, doesn't it? All right. If that spirit is in our young men, suppose they lift Malcolm now through the movie and then attempt to declare the Nation of Islam as the killer of Malcolm X. Then the same spirit of retaliation that is with one gang over another could be in the heart of our misguided people against the Nation of Islam. Although most of you in the nation didn't know anything about the nation years ago, you just coming in. So you know very little of Malcolm. You know, probably some of you have never seen the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But it's to those who are bent on vengeance, it doesn't make any difference. You the people that killed Malcolm. We already lost a brother in Memphis over those same words, not handled correctly, and the brother was shot. Now, Muslims are very serious people. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad took the gun out of our hands. We don't carry weapons, brothers, because we will not or do not wish to harm any of our people. We just won't carry no weapons. We're a people of peace. I hope nobody ever forces us, like in the days of the prophet, to pick up the sword. That'd be a terrible day. That'd be a bad day. Now, 350 FBI agents that were working on communism in espionage. When communists, the work of communism broke up, those 350 agents were reassigned. And guess where the government said they were going to reassign them? To the black community to work among the gangs. In Los Angeles, one of the brothers was selling papers, and the police drove up to him and said, wait till the Malcolm X movie come out, you'll get yours. So it's not the movie that I'm concerned about. It's what the enemy intends to do behind the movie
to destroy the Nation of Islam and its leadership. Now, Muslims, we have to be very strong, very committed, and very obedient in this hour. You must fight your tendency to rebel against instructions. We will be giving you all instructions as to how best to proceed in that time, so that perhaps we can get through it to the brighter day that lies just beyond it. A hint of what I intend to do is found in the history of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. When Malcolm made the statement of the chickens coming home to roost, who had just gotten killed? John Kennedy. Did the people love Kennedy?
Yes, sir.
Did the people love Malcolm? Not too many. So if Malcolm, through the press, was made to appear as though he mocked the death of Kennedy, was it wise for Malcolm to be in the public while the public was mourning the death of Kennedy? What do you think some crazed white folk or black folk who loved Kennedy would have tried to do to Malcolm if Malcolm were in the public? What would they have done? Do you think they would have tried to kill Malcolm?
Yes, sir.
If they thought Malcolm was making mockery of Kennedy's assassination and death?
Yes, sir.
If you lost somebody in your family, brothers, that you loved, and somebody silly came to you and started laughing about the loss of a member in your family that you loved, wouldn't that anger you enough to hurt that person? Well, that's the point. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad took Malcolm out of the public and silenced him for 90 days. And when I spoke to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he said, well, I'm going to keep him out of the public until the eye of the public cools from the death and assassination of the president. Therein lies guidance from the guide.
Yes, sir.
My last public engagement is scheduled for November the 21st, 3 days into the movie. I probably won't speak again outside of the mosque until Savior's Day, February 1993, if it is the will of Allah. I don't want to see the brothers during that time period on the corners selling any newspapers. I want all the brothers to go door to door. Because when you're on a corner, you're set up for a drive-by shooting, and it don't have to be one of our beautiful people. It could be a government agent that's come by and shoot a brother down. But if there's no target for them to see, there ain't no target for them to shoot. Now I realize that some of the brothers, you do well on that corner. But from the 18th of November, you'll do well if you obey my instruction. There will be no sisters permitted to the mosque meetings at night during that time period. This will probably be one of your last night meetings. Because if we have to fight at night, it'd be better that our women and children not be around. Man fight better when he know he ain't got to worry about his wife. You understand? So until I tell you you can come out at night again, I don't want to see the sisters except the officials who have a post for any of our lost found sisters who wish to come and hear the teachings. But the sisters generally will be excused. You'll get a letter to this effect. On Sundays, all meetings are to be conducted within an hour and a half to 2 hour period. Nothing over that, because the sun sets, and I don't want you out in the street at dark, and I don't want the brothers hanging out in the street after 10 o'clock at night.
Yes, sir.
The people that work nights, that work the streets at night, I should say, are the worst of the people. Take your homes for your places of refuge and your places of entertainment. Be in your homes.
Yes, sir.
Take your homes for your places of refuge and your places of entertainment. Be in your homes. If you want somebody to come to your home, you want to have dinner, you have people to your home. Until I can test that atmosphere and see what it is, we're going to preserve and protect the nation. My next edition of the paper, I'm going to warn the government that if they try this, Allah, whose anger is already kindled against them, will retaliate by taking whole cities out. Listen, listen. You may not know who I am, but it's time that the whole damn world find out. And if I am who I think I am, which I don't talk about, I never talk about who I think I am. So many of you make little mistakes in handling me. I'm your brother. I always want to be your brother. And I've always tried to be just a plain brother. But I'm a lot more than that.
Right.
Do you know that I have more rights over you than you have over yourself?
Peace.
But I walk right among you and never try to make no show of nothing big about myself. But I know who my father is, you see. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad is no lightweight man. He had a lot of juice, a lot of power with God.
Right.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And he told me that I had not one backing me up, but two.
Yes, sir.
And he told me how he knew or began to learn how his will was tied up in the will of God. And he tried it several times and found out that whatever he wanted in a certain way, God brought it. And I'm telling you straight up, I have tried it. And I found God's will with me.
Yes, sir.
It's true.
Yes, sir.
I love you. And if anybody harms you, as you and I are in the pursuit of our duty to civilize our people, I will call on Allah to show forth his power and make this beast to know that he is God and he's with us, and I will call the shot before it happens.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. To let you know
Yes, sir.
that when it happens, there's a God with Farrakhan.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not talking about your God.
Yes, sir.
I'm talking, when I say your God, I'm not talking about Muslim. I'm talking about the disbeliever. I'm not talking about no spook,
Yes, sir. Right.
no spirit.
Yes, sir.
I'm talking about a real live God that already is angry with this devil and is beating him down with the forces of nature, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us he would do. So I'm asking you, my beloved brothers and sisters, please stop rebelling. Practice obedience. Start with little things. Let me talk about just a few little things you can start with. Sisters, just start with something little like a headpiece. All right, Sister Shabazz. Because if you can't surrender to little things, you'll stumble over big things. Just a simple little thing like covering. Don't be afraid to show yourself as a Muslim.
Right.
Put on your garment.
Yes, sir.
Be proud. Because that's your protection. Sisters will tell you when they get on the bus, if you look like Lucinda Smith, the brother on the bus will treat you like Lucinda Smith.
Right.
But if you look like Lucille 3X, you might find them getting up and giving you a seat.
Right.
You might find them stop swearing because they're growing to respect the nation.
Right.
And to respect a woman who is trying to make something out of herself in the way of righteousness. Little things
try to obey. The thing that you, I don't want to do that. I know it's right, but I don't. That's the thing. You start fighting to try and bring yourself in line. I know it's a struggle. Brothers, brothers, brothers.
Yes, sir.
I ain't going to stay over here messing with the sisters. I don't talk to the brothers. Now, you know, brothers, if the minister tell you, don't sell on the street corners, in your mind you say, man, this is a hot corner. I know this corner. The minister don't know this corner. See, I don't never see him in this neighborhood. I know this corner. Everybody, stop rebelling, Brother Shabazz, and be Brother Muhammad.
Yes, sir.
Be the children of Master Farad Muhammad and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and let's let Brother Shabazz die a natural death.
Yes, sir.
You know, brothers, some of us very rebellious, man. Little things that the captain asks you to do. Try and bring yourself in line to submission, brothers. Let's make it easy on ourselves and easy on those whose effort it is to try and lead us. And let me tell you, the more you bring yourself to fight against rebellion, the straighter the path gets, the narrower it gets, but we'll get through. My last statement, Moses led the children of Israel through the Red Sea. He ain't talking about sea. Sea means people. Red Sea means angry people. People who are at war, in revolution and strife. But Moses, with the rod, cut a path in the Red Sea that the children of Israel could walk straight through. Pharaoh's army came in there and got swallowed up in the sea, in the bloodshed and revolution and strife and war that's come on the planet. If you strive to obey me, you will find that I'm not asking you to do anything unreasonable. But should I ask that, and you don't quite understand, remember the words of the apostle and burn it into your brains. Wherever you see him, look at him.
Yes, sir.
Why he wants you to look at me? I ask myself that question. Why? Why, dear apostle, do you want the people to look at me? Because he's doing something with me.
That's right.
Right in front of your eyes.
That's right. Bear with me.
What is he doing with you, Farrakhan? He's making you an example. You know, there's a scripture that says you can't put new wine in an old wineskin lest the wineskin break and the wine spill out. You can't put the new wisdom in the old body and form. You got to make a new wineskin. He's making your brother new right in front of your face.
Right, sir.
As a sign to you that he promised us, if we submit, he will turn our age back and reverse the process of death so that instead of getting older, we'll get younger. Look at him. And whenever he speaks, listen. Why, dear apostle? Because his preaching is going to be a bearing of witness of me, he said.
That's right.
Wherever he tells you to go, go. Wherever he tells you to stay away from, stay away from. So, you know, when I say things to you, really, if it's like guidance like that, instruction like that, pay good attention to it. Because when you go contrary to it, you're going to suffer some kind of consequence. Train yourself to obey. That's the only way, by the grace of God, I'll be able to get everyone through. And I want to get us through safely. The devil is planning against us. I'm hoping that we can get right on past the plans of the devil. Yes. And guess what? The movie Malcolm X will present the Nation of Islam again to the world. And then once we get past the traps, the people will start flowing to the nation.
That's right.
Every major television, magazine in Europe, in Germany, in England, all after me to ask me about Malcolm. Say, that's not my mission to talk about Malcolm. They want to get me in the middle of the confusion that they create. Stay out of it. And if anybody that you're selling a paper to say, y'all killed Malcolm, all you say is, the persons that they accuse of killing Malcolm X were arrested and brought to trial and served 26 years to life in the penitentiary. I am a new Muslim. I never went to jail, nor did the nation go to jail for the killing of Malcolm X any more than the Pope in the Catholic Church goes to jail when one Catholic kills another, or any Jews go to jail. The Jewish people don't go to jail because Milken and Boski robbed the American people of all of these millions and billions of dollars. They don't put all the Jews in jail. So don't blame all the Muslims for what one or two may have done, and they may have been agents of the federal government. And anybody will tell you that the government had more agents in the Panther Party than the Panthers had Panthers. And you know what? The messenger said the Nation of Islam at this time, at the time of that writing, is seeded with these rotten characters. Honeycombed, he said, with these rotten characters, stool pigeons and all that kind of thing coming inside the nation. So the enemy that's in here tonight, you go back and tell them that it wouldn't be wise to attack the nation, because when you attack us, God himself will retaliate against you. And there's no power in the world, any match for the God who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad and his Christ. Be obedient. It is not better than sacrifice. It is the highest, noblest form of sacrifice. And it is that sacrifice that brings us into nearness to God. Let's get as near to God as we can. Thank you for listening. May Allah bless you as I greet you in peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Thank you. These instructions for the sisters, that we will not have any night meetings for you, will begin in the second week of November. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. With your kind permission, I would like to be excused. I pray Allah that He bless all of you to get home safely.
Yes, sir.
Brother Minister Ismail Muhammad will give you your final instructions. I enjoyed being in your company,
Thank you, brother.
and I thank you so much for coming out. I hope you got something from it.
Thank you,
Assalamu
sir.
alaikum.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Allahu Akbar. Long live Muhammad. 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 Long live